Picture a British town centre in winter. The air is cold. The street is busy but uneasy. Outside a familiar red storefront, people queue not out of excitement, but out of fear of missing out. Inside, shelves are stripped bare. Sale signs cover the windows. Parents load toys into baskets. Children clutch bags of pick and mix. Elderly shoppers linger, knowing they are witnessing the end of something deeply familiar. This is Woolworths. In early 2009, the last UK stores of Woolworths closed their doors. More than 800 shops vanished. Roughly 27,000 workers lost their jobs. A brand that had survived wars, recessions, and cultural revolutions disappeared in a matter of weeks. At first glance, the explanation seemed simple. The internet was rising. Competition was brutal. The financial crisis was raging. But that explanation is not enough, because Woolworths did not die quietly. It died in full view of the public, with crowded stores and strong sales during its final days. Customers had not abandoned it. The question is not why people stopped shopping at Woolworths. The real question is why shopping there was no longer enough to keep it alive. For generations, Woolworths was woven into everyday British life. It was not a luxury brand, and it was not a discount warehouse. It occupied the dependable middle ground, a place where almost everyone could find something useful. Its genius was simplicity. One store could satisfy many needs: sweets for children, stationery for school, music for teenagers, household goods for adults, and seasonal items for holidays. This range made Woolworths a destination rather than a single-purpose stop. Equally important was location. Woolworths stores were typically placed at the heart of town centres. They acted as anchors for the high street. Shoppers who came for Woolworths would also visit nearby cafes, shoe shops, newsagents, and chemists. The store generated foot traffic that sustained entire local retail ecosystems. By the early 2000s, Woolworths operated more than 800 locations across the UK and Ireland. It employed tens of thousands of people and generated billions of pounds in revenue each year. This was not a marginal player clinging to relevance. It was one of the pillars of the British high street. At its peak, Woolworths thrived on habit. Customers did not debate whether to visit. They simply went. It was familiar, affordable, and trusted. Seasonality played a major role. Christmas in particular was critical. Decorations, toys, confectionery, and small gifts filled the aisles. For many families, Woolworths was a central part of holiday shopping routines. Even as competition intensified, this habit persisted. In the final weeks before closure, when clearance sales began, stores were packed. Media reports described huge daily takings as customers rushed to grab bargains before the chain disappeared forever. This moment matters because it reveals a key truth. Demand had not vanished. The public still valued Woolworths. So why did it collapse anyway? Because modern retail survival depends on far more than customers at the till. Please subscribe to our channel and like this video. We want to hit 5,000 subscribers. Now let's move on with the video. Beneath the surface, Woolworths had been weakening for years. The first crack was identity. Woolworths sat in an increasingly uncomfortable middle position. Discount chains undercut prices. Supermarkets expanded aggressively into non-food categories. Specialist retailers offered deeper ranges and clearer value propositions. Woolworths struggled to explain why it was the best choice in a crowded market. The second crack was relevance. Music had once been a core strength. CDs and DVDs drove both footfall and profit. But as digital downloads and streaming gained momentum, those categories declined. Woolworths was slow to replace that lost volume with new growth engines. The third crack was operational complexity. Managing hundreds of large stores with thousands of product lines is expensive and unforgiving. Inventory mistakes lock up cash. Excess stock sits unsold. Shortages miss sales opportunities. Over time, Woolworths found itself carrying the wrong stock in the wrong places, tying up money it could not afford to lose. Then came the most dangerous crack of all: debt. By 2008, Woolworths was carrying a heavy debt burden. Debt reduces flexibility. It limits strategic options. Most importantly, it requires confidence from lenders and suppliers, and confidence was about to collapse across the entire financial system. The global financial crisis of 2008 changed everything. Banks that had once been willing to extend credit suddenly pulled back. Risk tolerance vanished. Lending decisions became brutally conservative. For retailers, this was devastating. Retail depends on working capital. Stock must be paid for before it is sold. If banks hesitate and suppliers demand faster payment, even a busy store can run out of oxygen. This is exactly what happened to Woolworths. In November 2008, the company entered administration, not because its stores were empty, but because its financial backers no longer believed it could safely navigate the crisis. The balance sheet mattered more than the footfall. There were rescue discussions. Potential buyers considered acquiring parts of the business. Plans circulated that involved closing large numbers of stores to save a smaller core operation. For a brief moment, survival seemed possible, but time was the enemy. Each day of uncertainty made suppliers more cautious and landlords less flexible. Once trust is lost in retail finance, it is almost impossible to rebuild quickly. The decision to close the stores triggered one of the most dramatic retail exits in British history. Administrators chose to keep trading through Christmas to generate as much cash as possible. The result was a nationwide clearance event. Stores filled with shoppers chasing deals and saying goodbye to a brand that had shaped their childhoods. Then the closures began. By early January 2009, Woolworths was gone. Around 27,000 employees were made redundant. Many had worked for the company for decades. For some towns, Woolworths had been one of the largest local employers. The physical impact was immediate. Woolworths stores were often large and centrally located. When they emptied, they left gaping holes in high streets that were already under pressure from declining footfall. This was not just the failure of a company. It was a shock to entire communities. The ripple effects spread quickly. Without Woolworths, foot traffic dropped. Nearby businesses saw fewer customers. Cafes lost morning trade. Small retailers lost impulse sales. Some adapted, others closed. Local councils and landlords struggled to repurpose the empty units. Many spaces remained vacant for years. In some towns, former Woolworths buildings became symbols of decline, boarded up reminders of a healthier retail past. Politicians described the collapse as a tragedy for workers and communities. Economists pointed to it as evidence of how fragile the high street had become. Spending did not disappear completely. Consumers still bought toys, sweets, and household goods. That money shifted towards supermarkets, discount chains, and online retailers, but the damage to town centers was structural. Woolworths had provided a reason to visit. Once that reason disappeared, habits changed. People drove to retail parks or shopped online. Those habits proved difficult to reverse. So who was to blame for the fall of Woolworths? There is no single villain. The company was squeezed by competitors on all sides. It struggled to redefine its identity. It carried too much debt for a volatile environment, and it was caught in a financial crisis that destroyed lender confidence at precisely the wrong moment. The most important lesson is this: Woolworths did not fail because Britain stopped caring. It failed because caring does not pay suppliers. It failed because nostalgia cannot serve as debt. And it failed because in retail, survival depends as much on finance as it does on customers. For the British High Street, the collapse marked a turning point. It revealed how dependent town centres had become on a small number of anchor stores. When one fell, the damage spread far beyond its own walls. Today, when you pass a former Woolworths location, now divided into smaller units or still standing empty, you are not just looking at a closed shop. You are looking at a warning. A reminder that even the most familiar names can disappear quickly when structural weakness meets economic shock. Woolworths was more than a retailer. It was a habit, a shared routine, a piece of everyday life. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe.